Hi, Mary Alice. How are you?
Hey, Doug. Or do you prefer Douglas?
Douglas is good.
All right, Douglas, what a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me to your show.
Well, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. Nice to have you with us. Let's see. New York Times best-selling author of 27 books. Now, how long did it take you to write 27 books?
Well, I think 1995 was my first book. And so there were a couple years that I wrote two books a year, but that was rare. And this last year, it was kind of crazy because I did start my middle grade fiction, which is what we're talking about today. So I literally had a novel come out for Summer of Lost and Found, which was the big book. And then I had my very first middle grade book, The Islanders. And then I also had a short story that came out in an anthology. So that was, I guess you could say, three publications. And so kind of bulked up last year.
Okay, so now are all of the 27 books children's books or are they all different?
No, I'd say the majority of them are all adult novels. Most people know Mary Alice Monroe as an adult novelist. My novels are always set against some sort of a conservation theme, but they're novels, they're stories first. And only in the last 4 years have I started diving into middle grade fiction, and that's the series, The Islanders.
The Islanders, okay, which is what we're going to talk about. Before we get to that, though, I'm curious about your adult novels. You said that they always have a conservation theme, but what is the genre of the novel? Is it a romance or is it?
No, it's fiction, literary commercial, they call it. And even though people sometimes refer to my books as beach books, because they come out in the summer, and the titles often reflect beach. They're all marine, mostly marine themed. I have whales and dolphins and sea turtles, but it is, to my mind, there's a beach book is a book that comes out in summer, and that encompasses a whole lot of fiction.
Are there people in the books or is it only
Oh,
about?
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, this is an adult family, usually family saga. For example, the most popular of all my books is probably the Beach House series. And the Beach House is the one that came out in 2002. And it's been ongoing since then. And 20 years actually this summer. And the characters age like the Mitford series, they continue to grow. So we have seen the primary character, Kara, open up the series at 40, returning home to Charleston. And we've seen her age to where at 60 now, she's the matriarch of the next generation. And so I sort of grew up with her. It's been really amazing. And my Hallmark Hall of Fame made a film of that first, the Beach House. And we're probably going to continue the series, but we're still talking about it. COVID put a dent in all our plans. But it's really exciting to know that of all the books I've written, there is this one really strong beloved series, and I'm very grateful for it.
Is this like Dallas on the beach?
No, that's I would say the why of my writing, why I do what I do, is it's always about bringing people to nature and to connect with nature. I work with the wildlife and all the themes and the plots and the dialogues, all the settings for all my adult novels is to bring people to connect to nature, which is why at this later point in life, especially with the serious concern of climate change affecting us all, and we're already in it, I wanted to bring this message to the younger generation, the middle grade, because they are inheriting a world with a lot of challenges. And I hope to inspire this next generation the way I did the adults.
Oh, well, that's great. Okay, so it's not soap opera-ish in that sense,
No, I
no.
wouldn't never say anyone would qualify my books as that.
Okay. All right. Well, not having read them, I don't know where to start, so I just kind of
Well,
poke and
it's
prod.
interesting with a title like The Beach House, people, think there's definitely love stories in it, and most novels do, but there's serious issues, but it's set against family sagas. So I would just call them contemporary fiction novels. I think that's probably the safest. And for kids too, they're contemporary.
You mentioned your new series. Is this a new series, The Islanders?
The Islanders is brand new. I was asked if I was interested in writing for this new age group, 8 to 12, grades through high school. Actually, you can go through high school. And I was an instant yes, but it was new for me. And it's also new that with this series, I began working with a collaborator.
And the conservation theme runs through these
Absolutely.
books
I
as
mean,
well.
the reason I wrote this book was to get kids outdoors and unplugged from their computers. And I mean, we all use them and we need them, but these children, especially post-pandemic, are seriously addicted to their phones and their iPads, and there are deleterious effects for both mental and physical health. So my goal is to get them outdoors, unscreened, less screen time, more green time.
Oh, well, good for you. I think that's fantastic because I don't think we know the long-term effects yet.
It's interesting. In about 15 years ago, there was an expression by Dr. Richard Louv, nature deficit disorder. And that kind of people scratched their heads, but I knew exactly what he meant. Well, my husband did a lot of research. He's an NIH research scientist. And I scratched my head, and that's one of the reasons why I dove into this arena of bringing stories to light about nature. But what he was really saying was that there were a lot of deleterious effects, that we are not connected to nature. But now we have over 400 research studies to confirm that our mental and physical health are impaired if we connect too much to the internet and we don't get outdoors and disconnect. Nature deficit disorder is a real thing.
Well, not only connecting with nature, but connecting with human beings in a real
Yes. Oh, yes, Douglas, that's so true. I
environment.
do
Yeah.
feel if you get outside more, the health benefits. Well, I can rattle 5 reasons why you should unplug and get outdoors. Number 1 is mental health. You have better mental focus and mental acuity for both kids and adults. Number 2, mood lightening. You go outdoors and you feel better, less depression. 3, of course, the weight, the walking, all those are pretty obvious. But for mental health too, it lifts depression. And for both young kids with ADHD who have trouble focusing, as well as older adults who have trouble focusing as they slip and their memory fades, getting outdoors 2 hours a day makes a huge difference. In fact, there's a phrase I just heard and I absolutely love, that 2 hours outside is the new 10,000 steps.
Just 2 hours being outside.
Just being outdoors. So read that book outdoors, kids, like we used to. When we were all young, we all were outdoors all the time. So get back outdoors, adults and kids.
What
And
about
that's
for
why I wrote the book, to get them outdoors.
all right, what about for kids who live in the city? It's not quite as easy for
You
them
know
to
what? It's not as easy, but here's the thing. Whether you're outdoors in a park or your backyard in a suburban backyard, or you were lucky enough to have a 1,000-acre ranch or whatever, or you live where I do. I live on the ocean where I can walk the beach. Some of us, it's easier access than others, but outdoor is available to everybody, even in the cities. And I advise parents and grandparents to take the kids to their favorite parks. There's some really great parks out there, and go with them. And it doesn't have to be all day, in increments, a half hour, an hour. What's your favorite park out there? And let the kids weigh in and let them get dirty and messy. And what are the names of the trees in your neighborhood? I'll bet you dollars to donuts, most of you don't know. So if you grab leaves of the trees and you bring them home and you start a journal, discover the names of the trees, of the plants, the critters, the ants, the insects. Oh my gosh, how many kids are afraid of insects? They scream at the sight of any bug. It's because they have this fear of lack of knowledge. Education is the key. So find out what the bug is. Look it up, give it a name. Is it safe or not? There's a big difference between a daddy longlegs and say a brown recluse. You better know the difference. But if you do know the difference, then you can go out and play. And I really incorporate this into the novel, where I put in the story for the kids, I put them on a remote island right outside where I live. It's called Deweese Island. And Douglas, it's a real place, and it's accessible only by boat. So you can't get a car and drive there. In fact, on the island, Deweese, no cars at all, only golf carts. There are no stores of any kind. And for these kids, no internet. So these children were put in in a place where they had no choice but to bellyache and complain for 24 hours. There's nothing to do. But then they start going out with their friends. They meet each other, 3 kids, and they just hang out with one another and start to explore. And they find out it's really a lot of fun.
Well, this sounds like a great story. I'd actually read this.
Adults are reading this book.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, Douglas, I always say this. Some of our most favorite books that we've ever read are probably those that we read when we were young.
When we were kids,
like
yeah.
Heidi or Secret Garden. Like, do you have a favorite that you could just name right now that you loved as a kid, as a boy?
Well, I'll tell you the one I loved in junior high school was called Flowers for Algernon.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, I actually acted that out in my class. I remember so heartbreaking when the reversal happened, but there you go. You remember that story for life. So I like to think that I have a lot of my adult fans reading this book and they're saying, Mary Alice, we love it. Oh my goodness, look at some of the great novels that have children as protagonists. It's written for adults and children. But when you write for the middle grade audience and you have children as characters, you don't eliminate important themes or issues or family problems. Depression is in this book. Shame is in this book. I think that in middle grade books, or I know that we handle the subjects with a bit more innocence, awareness of age, maturity, language, of course, so that we know, I respect that these kids know what's going on in the real world. Between 8 and 12 and 14, they understand. If the parents choose to read the book with them, my book or any book that a child reads, you then open a dialogue to discuss the issues, to share your family values, your morals too. But if you don't open up that discussion with your kids, you don't model that reading behavior, your children are going to read the books anyway. They're going to have these discussions on the playground. And I advise and recommend that we all share that with our children, because isn't that what the joy of parenting and even grandparenting is all about, that discussion?
Oh, I agree with you. And it always makes me unhappy, I guess I'll use that word, when I go to the supermarket and I see parents just giving the kids the phone as a substitute for real interaction. Like the phone has become like sort of a babysitter. And I'm talking like little kids, toddlers in strollers, and it's, oh my goodness, rather than picking them up. And
they should be looking out and seeing what's passing them in the street.
Yeah.
I do get that there are very important uses for internet. In fact, in book 1, The Islanders, the grandmother said no internet at all, and the kids just went cold turkey. But by book 2, I was reflecting, what's happening in the real world. The grandmother comes out of her depression, gets involved, and she understands there is a place for the internet. So I sort of opened the door for all of us to think about how much internet is in the family. Do we allow dinner time conversations interrupted by phones or going out to restaurants? My husband is, as I said, he's a child psychiatrist, and he always said 2 things. One is to have family dinners where no phones, no interruptions, and you begin a conversation, even at a very early age, because you're teaching your children to have dialogue and to share information other than, how was your day? Good. How are you? Fine.
Fine.
To elicit we all know those answers very well.
Yeah.
And the second thing is to get outside, to just unplug for a while, to take off, the social pressure our kids are under to be cool, to conform, especially in the middle grade, is profound. And it's really, especially now with TikTok and everyone knowing apps and thinking they have to be beautiful, when you unplug them, as I did in the story, and that's what I'm modeling, these 3 kids might not have been friends if they had met in the school on the mainland. They were kind of on this island outside, so they became friends. There was no social media. They only had each other. they found out they really liked each other despite gender differences, economic differences, race differences. And I feel very heartened when I see big movements in high schools today of kids voluntarily saying, this is my no phone day, this is my no online day, or this is my online afternoon. I think kids are recognizing they need some freedom.
Yeah. Mary Alice, we got to wrap this up. We are out of time, unfortunately.
Oh,
Thank you so
wow.
much.
Just scratch the surface.
Oh, I know, it just flew by. Your book is called, do you have
Search
it
for
there?
Treasure.
Search for Treasure.
And
Okay.
Search for Treasure. And it just debuted #3 on the New York Times list. So I think we're tapping into something very important.
Okay, so this is book one of the Islander series, right?
So book one is The Islanders. So book two, Douglas, is Search for Treasure. And that's the one that just came out. So if you're looking for good books for the kids for the summer that have animals and unplugging, the first is The Islanders and the second is Search for Treasure. And the third one's out next year. It's a series.
Do you have a website you want to give out?
Thank you, MaryAliceMonroe.com. And you can find out all about all my books, but also Search for Treasure.
Great. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. This was a nice
Thank you, Douglas.
conversation.
It was a good discussion. We